first regular meeting of the Richmond Board of Education on January 14th, 2019 at 7 o'clock. Tonight we have Kyle Bartels, advisor for the middle school Spelling and Geography B, and the 2018-19 Spelling and Geography B winners to lead the Board of Education in the Pledge of Allegiance. Do you guys want to come on up? Okay, so I'm going to introduce you guys. When you hear your name, go ahead and face the crowd. Just give a little wave. So tonight we have Kyle Bartels. We also have Madeline Foss and Edward Mullen. Okay, so we're going to flip around. You can face the flag, and you guys can say the pledge. You can start with your record.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job.
You're going to come up with the truth.
Yeah, you guys will come back for the tribute moment. Yeah. Great job, guys. Thank you. Next is our mission statement. Angela, would you please read the mission statement?
At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be successful in the global community.
Roll call, Angela.
Christine? Here. Sarah?
Here.
Jessica?
Here.
Kyle?
Here.
Margaret? Here. Sherry?
Here.
And I am present, and we have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda. I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the agenda as presented. Support. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the consent agenda as presented in the attached documentation.
Support?
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Hang up on that.
Oh, sorry, you had.
We have a couple resignations. Fred McCullumore, the trap team coach, resigned prior to the holiday break. Mandy Denipel, our Title I paraprofessional, resigned effective December 31st. And Jen Cleland, whose last day will be this Friday, social worker at the elementary school, has resigned to take a position in another district. Here tonight, we have a couple of the new hires. I'll introduce the ones that I do not believe are here. Anna English is the lead child care provider at Lee. Randy Newman is the theater music director for the K-12 program. Jennifer Dixon, lunchroom supervisor. Justin Camp is one of our bus drivers who was just recently hired. Here tonight is Carolyn Yellow. She is one of our child care providers at Lee. And we also have our new track coach, Mark Belindy, in the back.
Welcome.
There were no questions regarding the claims and accounts. In front of you should have a revised organizational meeting minutes from what was posted online on Friday.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. This is the point of the meeting where we're going to do our True Blue moment. It's where we highlight some of the great things that are happening in Richmond. And first on the agenda today is Kyle Bartel and the Geography and Spelling Bee winners. If you guys want to come back up.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having us here today. I am Kyle Bartels, and I'm the Geography and Spelling Bee coordinator this year. And just a little bit of the process of what goes into our Geography and Spelling Bees. First, there's a classroom competition, and the English teachers and then the social studies teachers do the initial room winner. And then after that, we have our school competition. So this year, Eddie Mullen Rutledge was our school winner. He competed with 13 other room winners from the 5th through 8th grade. And he answered questions in regards to state capitals, world geography, and map reading. His winning question in the final round, which was a 7-round tiebreaker, was pretty long and very exhilarating. But his question was, Great Bear Lake is the largest lake entirely within what country? And the answer is Canada. So he won on that final question, so we're very proud of him. He recently took a qualifying test, and it was an online test, so we'll have to wait and see, what the results are. But 100 of the highest scorers will then compete in the state. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We'll see what happens with that. I think we'll know by March 1st, I'm sorry, if he will qualify. So we'll wait and see on that. So congratulations to him. Our second competition, both competitions were right before Christmas break. And Maddie's competition was very similar. We had a room competition and from there the school. And she competed with 14 other room winners, 5th through 8th grade. She spelled many different words. And it went in 8 rounds. We finally got to our final the final round and the final 2. And it was a very competitive competition. Her winning word ended up being juniper. And so now Maddie will go on to compete at the MISD on March 1st at 1 o'clock. And from there, there'll be one state going on to the state competition from there. So regardless of the outcomes of the next level, we just wanted to recognize these students for their excellence and the learner qualities that RMS students are always striving for. And congratulations again to these 2, and good luck to both.
Thank you. Great job, guys. Good luck. All right, next True Blue moment today we have is Mr. John Estrada, and we've got the Culinary Arts Safe Serve Train Recognition and the Year 2 Culinary Arts Food Truck Project.
So I am recognizing those who did the Serve Safe. The Serve Safe is an accredited certificate and training program that's typically used for those who are management staff in any sort of food service industry. So it's not common for high school students to take it. So of the 47 students that I had, 13 of them passed, and I have 4 of them here, 4 or 5. I have Aiden Collins, Kira Brunel, Ethan Wyatt, and John May. They are 4 out of the 13. Special shout outs to Garrett Trappist, Stephanie Schmidt, drawing a bunch of a few other ones. I apologize for that. But here are 4 of them, and they would like to give a demonstration about, not demonstration, sorry, just say a few things about what they learned from Serve Safe.
I'm glad I took this class this year because it hasn't helped me with only learning about cooking, but it's something I'll need for the rest of my life. So I'm just glad I took it.
And to expand upon what Kira said, it also assists me in my base for a culinary career in the future by already getting this exam done with as a prerequisite, as I said before, to continue my culinary career.
I appreciate the course that we have at the high school now, experiencing the culinary field, getting an idea for it if I want to continue with the education in college, and really eye-opening, and I appreciate the course. Thank you.
I respect the curriculum and the course, and as a future person working in the culinary field, that certificate is coming in for me.
So again, kind of give a rundown again. It's accredited food and beverage safety training program by the National Restaurant Association. I found my list of students. So Jackson Allen, Josh Rumsey, Aiden Collins, Eric Heck, Garrett Trappist, Ethan Wyatt, Caitlin Sears, Alex Cools, Kier Burnell, Stephanie Schmidt, Renee Duvall, and John May are all the students that passed this exam.
Good job.
And then as far as my year 2 students, Elliot and Jacob are my year two vets. I want to give them a special shout out because they've kind of been teaching themselves as we go along on their own while I've been focusing most of my attention on year one. So the first project they've done all semester is come up with a theme and concept for a food truck project covering 4 chapters from our culinary book. So if you guys want to come on up, they brought the little 3D diagram that they made of the food truck along with their menu board with it, and they also provided samples of some of the food that they had. So Jacob here, his food truck is soup related. With the soup truck, he thought it'd be a little bit versatility with it. So for his soup that he has, ham and cheddar broccoli soup. And then with Elliot's food truck, it's based on his heritage, so it is a Polish theme, and he has Polish sausage and vegetables. So if you guys do not want to sample, just let us know. If you're not, hope you're hungry.
So do they come up with these recipes on their own, or what do they find them somewhere? How do they get the recipes from
A little bit of both. They kind of looked online, looked for a recipe, and then we found a way to tweak it and make it our own.
That's great.
And with it, they found the recipe. We went out grocery shopping to price out all the ingredients to determine the price for the menu and cost per recipe. And then one day in December, we decided to make it an all-day field trip at the middle school with all the recipes that they had. And then we're hoping with this will help us come up with the recipes and menu for the restaurant when it does open. So I thought it was a good way to kind of get the experience we needed to price up the ingredients and cost up the recipes.
Yep. Mr. Estrada and the students have been very flexible this first semester. As you know, the culinary room has been under renovation. Within the next probably 2 weeks, we should be finalized. There'll be a couple of little things we have to get, some of the small products, but it really looks nice in there. I mean, it is a fully functional kitchen. It'll have half of it a seating for 24 people, which our goal is to open up to the public, so the students will be serving in a restaurant.
And then I also want to give a shout out to the high school kitchen staff because we've kind of invaded their space, so it's been very crowded, very hectic, very claustrophobic. We're sharing utensils, items, cooler and freezer space, but they've kind of popped it up and made an effort with kids. Thank you.
This is very good.
Very good.
Awesome.
Good job, guys. Okay, next tribute moment we have is School Board Recognition Moment. Brian?
As citizen leaders, individual school board members face complex and demanding challenges. They are ultimately described as having the most important volunteer job in our country, facing the toughest challenges as an elected American government. Yet school board members are just ordinary citizens with extraordinary dedication to our nation's public schools. All Michigan citizens should recognize the vital contribution of these men and women and the crucial role they play in educating our children. January is School Board Appreciation Month. Public education is the backbone of the American society, and local school boards are deeply rooted in the U.S. tradition. It's the foundation in which our democracy was built. Today, local school boards continue to do the most important work of their communities, and that is educating our youth. The job of the school board member is tough. The hours are long, and there are very few thanks and far between. Too often, we are quickly to criticize the school board member without really understanding the complex nature of their decision. Now it's time to thank them for their untiring efforts. School board members come from a variety of backgrounds, yet they share a common goal: helping students achieve in school and life. As a state, Michigan has faced many challenges, but the key is to a brighter future is a strong public education. We often forget about the personal sacrifices school board members make. Board members spend hundreds and hundreds of hours each year leading their district, spending time at board meetings away from their families, etc. They continually advocate for children in our state and in this district. In the past year, school board members have made passionate pleas to our legislators. This December is probably a very good indication of lame duck. Speaking out against budget cuts, enforcing and pushing for smart reforms, not politically motivated reforms. The month of January marks the annual observance of School Board Appreciation Month. It's our time to show you that we appreciate you for what you do and what you have committed to do for our district. On behalf of the students, staff, and the Richmond community, I want to thank you as a whole. Thank you for your dedication and sacrifice and choose what you have chosen to do in order to make sure our district is the best that it can be. In these bags are gifts from, on behalf of the central office, Little Lee Elementary School, from students and staff and the parent-teacher organization there, from the middle school and as well as the high school. So when I call your name, if you come up and receive a certificate of appreciation and your gift. In the order that the bag is up here, no particular order. So we will adjust it. Angela? Christine? Sarah? Jerry? We can give them a round of applause for their dedication.
Thank you, Brian. All right, next we have a couple presentations tonight. Our first presentation is the overnight trip for the high school robotics.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I am Nick Mathis. I'm one of the co-advisors for the high school robotics team. So we are here to present you guys with an overnight trip that we are taking the students for. Unfortunately, most of the competitions that are within the Metro Detroit area are either already booked because there's a bunch of DPS schools going there, or we just didn't get a chance to get to them yet. So the closest competition besides one we're already going to is 2.5 hours away in Gull Lake, Richmond, Michigan. So what will happen is we'll be leaving so we'll be taking all the kids and leaving the 14th right after school. They'll be missing school that Friday and returning approximately 9 o'clock on that Saturday. The hotels and stuff, the hotels and food will be covered by the students. We've already had a parent meeting about that, and we're already starting to take care of that. Like I said, this is one of our competitions that we usually do at Waterford High School, but instead now we're having to travel all the way out there. So transportation will be carpool. If needed, the team will rent a 15-passenger van, but as of right now, it's not looking like we're going to have to. In the overnight extended trip that I sent to Brian, it has all our hotel information, what staff members will be going. So myself, the other co-coach, John, and the middle school FTC coach, Shelley DeLeo, will all be going as staff of the district. So there will be supervision on top of mentors such as John Rashawn, Sue Slavink, and Steve Casita. They will be all going. So we will have supervision. All students will be staying with students per the district policy, so that's already taken care of, and then each mentor will have their own room.
And if you do have to rent a van, is that covered with the cost that they're paying?
No, it'll just be taken out of the team's internal account from sponsorships that we've raised for over the summer. Any other questions?
How many schools are participating in this event?
40.
40.
Yep, so usually it's just like a regular 40-team competition that is being held in Marysville like we are going to the week before spring break, but instead of us going to a local, we're having to travel all the way out there. So another team, St. Clair High School is also going to this competition, and through our Blue Water Area Robotics Alliance, we've become great friends with them, so we'll have resources out there if something is to happen, that we do have people that we know out there that will be able to help us in case something does arise.
How come it changed?
So something happened with the event, and they're no longer hosting the event. So we're having
So you had to find somewhere else.
Exactly, yeah. Any other questions?
All right, so as I know you probably were, we're going to vote on this in 2 weeks. You don't have to come back. Mr. Walmsley can get in touch with you and let you know.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our second presentation is the 2018-19 School Improvement Update. I'll start with Will Ellie Elementary. Mr. Koshin.
As Mr. Koshin's getting ready, I just want to make sure you have the paper copy for the middle school and then the revised one for the high school. The elementary you had already. So, Mr. Koshin.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Going to continue with the first presentation that we had. So just for a little review, what the school improvement goals are for the elementary. All students will become proficient readers. All students will become proficient writers. And to address those two areas, our main focus for this school year is looking at balanced literacy and those different components. There's 10 total components for the balanced literacy, and we'll talk about a couple that we're focusing on at the elementary. And then all students will improve their math proficiency, and we look at the 8 mathematical practices to address those. So since the last presentation, we've had grade level professional development. We've had December and January meetings. We began to look at the pre-K through 12 indicators of high quality literacy instruction. We continue to have the literacy coaching from the Macomb Intermediate School District come as a team to work with our staff. And we continue to look at the 8 mathematical practices. So something that's new from the ISD, they have the pre-K through 12 indicators. a very nicely spiral-bound packet. I was fortunate enough to go to one of the trainings, which allowed me to get these for the staff. So at this point, the kindergarten, first, and second grade teachers all have received one of these. And fourth grade, we meet with the coaching team from the ISD on January 23rd, and they'll bring the rest of the packets for the fourth grade and the third grade teachers, so they'll all get a chance to look at these. So what these do, this helps teachers match between what they see in their classrooms with some of the best practices. So for example, one of the areas we focus a lot on is guided reading. So as it shows in the packet here, it has what the teacher should be doing in the class during guided reading, and then it has what the students should be doing. So for teachers, as they're developing the lesson plans, it gives them a reference to look at, make sure they're getting some of the key ideas, some of the key things, they're the best practices. And as an administrator, when I go into classrooms for walkthroughs, for observations, it gives me something that I can look at too to see what the teachers should be doing and what the students should be doing. So once again, this was just developed by the ISD, and we've been able to get the packets here because we're working with the literacy coaches even before the general population can order these. So we've kind of got these in advance, which has been very helpful. With these, with the teachers, going through an introduction by myself during grade level meetings, and with the literacy coaches, how to dive in this a little bit more and actually create lesson plans using this as one of their key references and resources. So teachers were all very excited when they received these, and it's a very welcome addition to the resources that we're able to use at LEAD. Kind of just explains a little bit what we just discussed about the observable, research-supported practices that we hope to see in classrooms. Another resource that we've been able to use is literacyessentials.org. A lot of times it helps anybody as they're continuing to look at best practices, to refine some of their skills, and to look at their instruction as they reflect on it, is to see some teachers modeling. Currently we have some teachers who have went to other teachers' classrooms just to see, observe some of the lessons. But what this does is it gives teachers an opportunity to have different grade levels, different videos in specific areas. So some of the online modules, there's practice for early literacy, pre-kindergarten. All the preschool students that we have really focus on working with literacy with those students. And then K through 3. You may notice it only goes up to third grade. At this point, the Literacy Essentials, they do not have the fourth grade modules developed yet. They're in the process of doing that. So I'll give you one other just example. So these are video sample practices, and we'll kind of talk about it, and it goes with the frameworks that we have also. So it talks about choice in reading, writing sample, writing for a purpose. So they all have themes. So during our grade level PDs, we've looked at these, reflected on teacher practice and observed, kind of doing an observation of what the teachers on these videos do. So we can see how that looks compared to some of the essentials and some of the indicators that we've been working on. At our last grade level PD, we are focusing, as we always continue to, M-STEP prep, what it looks like and what we can do. So we've looked at many sample questions. So as the teachers are doing their guided reading, asking those comprehension questions, looking at the samples that the state gives us so that teachers can model those type of questions that the students will see on M-STEP. So students are familiar with what the questions sound like and how to answer them. We looked at the 4-point rubrics. So when students are doing their writing, they can look at how many points they will get. So those M-STEP prep takes place at all times and just incorporate it into everyday lessons. The ISD literacy coaches, not only do they come in and observe and give feedback, but teachers have also had the opportunity to request the coaches to come in and model some lessons, model some areas that the teachers would like. So as we do this, it's not us or myself or the administrators telling teachers what they need to do. It's, what do you need help with? What do you need some extra support in? What can we do to just help you, be the best that you can be? Some modeling that teachers have requested for kindergarten, looking at some guided reading. For first grade, interactive writing, and then as you see, grades 2, 3, and 4, what our main focus is this year is looking at guided reading. And teachers know very willing, they've taken some huge growth and great steps in continually to grow as professionals and to continue to improve their instruction to help best serve the students. So all grade levels except for fourth grade have gone through their second rounds with literacy coaching. Fourth grade will be next week on the 23rd, focusing once again on the literacy indicators, the booklet that we've shown, observations, what they see in the classroom, and also includes reflection on the lessons. So the literacy coaches will be in the classroom about half the day in the morning to observe, take notes, and then in the afternoon, we're all able to meet just to have discussion. A lot of it is having the teachers reflect upon their lessons, reflect on what they've been doing in the classroom, and having those types of discussions. So that takes us to kind of what we've done in the second round here. The next month, we'll just continue looking at what we've been doing with the mathematical practices and with the literacy coaching. Any questions?
Yeah, I do. Okay, they've come twice,
Yes.
and so how many times will?
3 times total. So the third time that they come in for the observation in the morning and the coach in the afternoon, they'll be in again in March. They've come, when they do modeling, they kind of come on their own and they kind of work out the teacher's schedule. So the coaches have been here more than twice, but twice for the observation and the coaching, and just as they fit it in their schedules and the teacher schedules, they'll come in for modeling, so whoever best fits the teacher schedules.
And what's the end game of it?
At the end, kind of just seeing where we're at and see what support the staff teachers might still need for next year. So it's a discussion that we'll have at the end of this year with myself, literacy coaches, the staff, and then Mr. Walmsley. So the end result, the end of the year may not be the end. It might just be a continuation if there's other resources and other support they need for next year. So we'll kind of we'll reflect and kind of see where we stand at the end of this year and see where we need to go with it.
And then the idea with the school improvement plan, that is, you would, I don't want to say fidget with it, that's not the right word, but you'll
adjust it.
Adjust it.
Yes, as needed with the needs. Today, just our staff, PD, we worked on our school systems review to see what areas we still might be missing some components of. So it's a continuous reflection, looking at where we need to go with the school improvement plan. So it's an ever-evolving document. Even though at the end of the year we do have to turn in a final document, but final just because we meet the deadline, we have something turned in, but we revisit and we continue throughout the course of even the summer, the next year, looking at the same school improvement plan and what adjustments we need.
Mr. Koshin?
Yes.
The training that takes place at Macomb Intermediate School District, is that a classroom setting or is that one-on-one, or how does that work?
When I went to the IC for the training, or?
You said that they're going to have 3 days of the training, new teacher training, and new teacher.
Oh, that's for the classroom instruction that works. So yes, that is, yeah. So that'll be a group and they'll just go for a full day, and I believe that's 3 sessions that they attend.
Okay, great.
To follow up on your comment, Ms. Stelter, the end game here is to make sure that our staff have the tools and are equipped to make sure that they are implementing the best practices that we know work. We want our kids to have the biggest chance for success in the future. And I would ask that anybody in the listening audience, and at the elementary school, typically you don't think of it this way, but if there's any class of 29 parents out there, second graders, would you raise your hand? Okay, that's the group that the state is watching, because that's the group statewide that if they are not proficient on the M-STEP next year, this is a law that our legislators have passed, they are to be retained in third grade. Does anybody on the board want to take a guess how many third graders currently are on track to be retained? Excuse me, current second graders with the predictability are on track to be retained? Statewide. 47% of all second graders. That's ludicrous. And and it's a law that was passed, and hopefully we have one more year to get it changed. But I want to compliment Mr. Koshin and the teachers because they have walked into all, and I think Mrs. Shore, if you don't mind, was it the second day of school you had the observation? One of the teachers had on the second day of school.
Yes.
And though they were a little anxious,
12.
they opened their arms and welcomed us, and they have been very receptive to everything and have tried various things to make the instruction better in the classroom. So kudos to the staff and the administrators in the building. But if parents, if anytime you need to get legislatively active, it is now. That law was passed in other states and has been repealed because it was not successful. But in Michigan, it was now.
And just as a reminder, your representatives are listed on the board.
And they've been updated.
School page. So you can contact them and let them know what your opinion is on that, definitely.
Thank you, Mr. Coach.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Bartels?
All right, good evening. Congratulations on the Board of Education Month. Continuing on with our middle school school improvement, I just wanted to touch base on that collegiality of our staff is of utmost importance for us to be able to move forward in a positive direction, for us to share those best practices that we've often heard a lot about. And we've been preaching constantly that education is not a private practice. You can't sit in isolation in your own classroom. We need to help each other to be successful with today's challenges. We have 8 new teachers that have been hired within the last 3 years that we've hit home runs on. We haven't missed a beat as far as collegiality has gone and togetherness and working together to maximize our instruction and work on these best practices. With that being said, as you know, CITW is a major focus for the district, but for us as well, to emphasize it in our school improvement plan, the 9 essential components that make up the CITW. So with our school improvement, we put in some accountability, making sure that we are indeed using the 9 essential strategies and components of classroom instruction each and every day. And then we have them listed here, 1 through 9. And in the parentheses there, that is the percentile gain as compared to the control group that the research team over 30 years has come up with, that these are the 9 main strategies that have the biggest impact on student achievement. And by doing it correctly and each and every day, and being consistent over time so students know what to expect. Every single one of our teachers has this Classroom Instruction that Works poster in their classroom. The 9 essential components are quantified here in 3 attributes where they fit in the educational process. One being creating the environment for learning, and then the other one helping students develop an understanding, and ultimately where we want to help them extend and apply the knowledge that we're learning. So those components work all hand in hand for those 3 attributes. And as a reminder, we have these posted in our classrooms. We as a school improvement team, to push that collegiality and the sharing of best practices, have created this board with the 9 essential components there on the left-hand side, with the percentile gain. Just as a reminder, those are in order, and then all around the board are just examples of what some of that might look like. So every 2 weeks we ask teachers to fill out a post-it note by content area, so we know we can track what content is using what, and if we have questions as administrators, or if teachers have questions, they can say, okay, where's my book? If I'm read, and on math, were my math teachers writing down either questions they want to know and get to know more of, or something they're proud of that they want to talk about. So this forces that collegiality and conversation. So then, just to give you an idea of what they look like, identifying similarities and differences, teachers said what matrix posters discuss book, movie differences and some similarities of the giver. And then, they have conversations with their colleagues about that and what that might look like. And summarizing and note-taking, text analysis class, students color code a short article in relation to text and structures and related to colors. Reinforcing effort, providing recognition, MVP of the week. Our shine qualities of all of the qualities and all of the daily tasks that aren't necessarily related to achievement. Showing good effort, being on time, being neighborly, helping each other out. We have a teacher who does MVP of the week. They keep tabs during the week. They bring it up to students, says you're the MVP of the week because, and it's been quite powerful. Basic design is just an example of homework and practice, which is probably the most self-explanatory. Students are practicing drawing faces before they actually do their final project, their portrait project. In non-linguistic representation, students will do a read, think, and draw, and then they draw the picture to connect the word to give them, and they're drawing it, so they're more likely to retain the information. So read, think, draw concept. Cooperative learning. We spent a lot of time in the last 2 years on cooperative learning, defining what cooperative learning is. Cooperative learning isn't just group work. It's where we assign specific roles to each person in the group for accountability purposes. But the example here was table partners creating writing assignment about a group migration project. Setting objectives and providing feedback. This teacher meets with every single student after an assessment and goes over one-on-one specifically to give them the feedback on their assessment, which is pretty powerful than just going over with the whole group. They're making time for these individual conversations. And in creating and testing hypotheses, our science teacher has students actually create a lab, give them materials, and give them enough information where they'll come up with a scientific concept or an idea instead of telling it to them. And lastly, cues, questions, advanced organizers. This person constantly uses think, pair, share. We are big on cold calling, making sure that students are mentally engaged in the classroom. Not to put them on the spot to be mean, but just to put them on the spot to make sure they're understanding and paying attention. So the think, pair, share allows students to think about it, pair with somebody, share back and forth, and then share back out so that they're not necessarily, if you have a class with a bunch of kids that are nervous and shy about getting in front of people or answering questions, they can do think, pair, share. And lastly, I'm going to read a quote from Madhya Shah. I do a lot of reading, and this reading in the last month and a half really hammers home the point that Mr. Berkmeyer and I are trying to do at RMS, and that is that teacher collegiality is necessary in an era of continuous change and improvement. It is seen as an opportunity to involve many individuals in solving the complex educational problems of modern times. A wider range of demands can be addressed by using a collaborative approach and by an individual or isolated efforts. That's what I'm saying, it's not a private practice. Schools that do not support collegiality among their staff and allow their teachers to work alone in their classroom waste human resources and contribute to the disenchantment with teaching as a career. It is warned that collegiality in any organization doesn't happen by chance. It needs to be structured, taught, and learned. And they follow up with saying, it is pointed out that laying the groundwork for a collaborative and collegial culture, collection of superstar teachers working in isolation cannot produce the same results as interdependent colleagues. The process of collegiality is likely to work only when a significant number of teaching personnel in a specific school becomes convinced that it will actually lead to improved teaching and learning. The overall analysis of the research studies on teacher collegiality determines that effective collegiality in schools is a vital source of enhancement in staff professional growth, student learning, and organizational effectiveness. And those are their words, not mine. But it was an excellent article, and that was a synopsis of what they put down on paper. But again, we cannot, we're blessed with the staff we have, Mr. Bertmeyer and I, and the level of professionalism that they have with each other, that they don't compete with each other. They're constantly sharing with each other to raise the level of achievement for all students.
That's it. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bentos.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got the high school, Mr. Castle.
Good evening. Here to kind of fill you in and update you on what's going on in the high school. So the first thing we're going to look at is the student achievement and the goals that we set at the beginning of the year for the high school. The first and probably most important goal that we have is to provide a high quality education for all of our students. So what are we doing in the high school to ensure this? At the high school so far, the administration has done over 100 walkthroughs and 25 formal observations. These can be anywhere from a pop-in that lasts 2 to 5 minutes to a formal observation where we're in there for the entire hour. And then the most important part of this is giving substantive feedback to the teacher in a timely manner. So after each one of these walkthroughs or one of these formal observations, there's some type of feedback. It can be an email, it can be a short conversation in the hallway, it can be a sit-down conversation with the teacher, but there's some type of feedback and some type of conversation going back and forth. So we're having 100 plus observations per semester. The second goal was that the staff will focus on a positive, trusting relationship with our students. So again, what are we doing to ensure that? The development and implementation of our student advisory committee. The student advisory committee met for the first time last Friday in the back conference room, and that is composed of 15 students that were nominated and selected after nominations from our staff. And in these meetings, we sit down, and the first meeting was kind of an open forum. We talked about what they like so far this year, what they don't like, things that they think they like to see in the future. A very open forum for them to kind of sit down with an adult and administrator and have a conversation about what's going on in their school. Because as much as we think of it as educators as our school, it's just as much the student's school in a daily basis. We are exploring the addition of an advisory class for the 2019-2020 school year. An advisory class, again, would be something that would cater to the students' needs, their individual needs, and provide another adult in the building that would know them on a daily basis. And this has been the focus of our school improvement team. The next goal we said we're going to set for ourselves was that we're going to closely monitor our students' attendance, academic, and behavioral needs, and provide for each of our students' needs. That is done through daily attendance check monitoring. So we have students that are high flyers as far as attendance, and those students' attendance are monitored daily, sometimes more than once daily. They're followed up by administrator, secretary, paraprofessionals to find the reasons for their tardiness and their absences. And then we do what we can, and you'll see here a little while longer, in a little bit, to solve the problems for them. And then we have individual student case studies in which students are selected based on a variety of criteria, and then we bring in several teachers, administrators, paraprofessionals, and we see if we can individualize a response to the issue. At the high school PD meetings, we are focusing on identifying the needs of our students, both academic and social. And it's more than just sitting down and saying what we think. We actually are looking for hard data on this, using data to make instructional decisions. That can be their grades, that can be their attendance, that can be what we're seeing in the hallway. We are identifying the students' strengths and weaknesses, and we kind of talked about this last time a little bit, through the use of the standardized testing. But one of the things that we've done recently in PD is examine the scope and sequence in which our classes are offered to make sure that we're offering the classes in the right order, because it's not enough to have just a certain classes, and also a lot of it is dependent on when we offer them, because we found that some of the criteria that's expected on our SAT are being covered in classes in 8th and 9th grade, and then we have to make sure that we go back and revisit that material to make sure that it's fresh in our students' mind for that spring testing. And then just our meeting dates. Culture and climate's another focus at the high school. What we do here, every morning if you walk outside, you're going to see somebody outside greeting the students. Rain, snow, cold, sleet, it doesn't matter. Someone's going to be out there to shake the students' hands and welcome them to our school. We had a hot chocolate bar on December 20th. They absolutely loved that. Got them in there, got them all fired up. Only had a couple of spills, so the custodians weren't too mad at us for that one. We really encourage handshake conversations, which are just those short, 15, 20-second conversations. You make eye contact with the students, just to let them know that there's an adult in the building who's here to listen to them and serve their needs. We're revisiting the social contracts, which are done at the beginning of each semester. Gives the students ownership in their classroom. Really pushing for after-school availability. If you come into Richmond High School, other than the bell ringing to signify the end of 6 hours, some days you wouldn't know the school was over because there's that many teachers in the classroom with their students working on remediation, working on test retakes. It's very nice to see there's teachers here sometimes 5:30, 6 o'clock at night working with the students. And then the communication and announcements. We've added several students to our morning announcements. We've been lucky enough to have Mrs. Taylor's class, which has some students with special needs, come down and they help deliver the Pledge of Allegiance and some of the morning announcements for us. They're very excited and they get us off to a very energetic start. So just trying to get that friendly feeling in the building. As far as attendance, again, we covered we're monitored on a daily basis, face-to-face conversations, and getting back to individualizing the responses to our students. We do things, donuts if you're getting here on time, breakfast sandwiches, we've bought alarm clocks for our students, we've called them at a certain time in the morning, whatever it takes to get them here. It's really, there's nothing that's off the table to get our students here and get them learning, because any of you in the building or in the room tonight that have teenagers, you know that getting a teenager moving in the morning is one of the hardest things you could ever do. So I wake up my teenager every morning, I get a couple of grunts and roll back over, and then I have to go back in and do it again. The goal is to be proactive instead of reactive, and the results so far for us, we've seen a 28.5% decrease in the number of students who have been tardy at least once per month. So from October to December, the number of students that are being tardy throughout the day has decreased significantly. We're focusing on bell-to-bell instruction, and the learning by the students is a non-negotiable. So, we've really been pushing it every day in the announcements. We finish every day with the announcements with every minute counts, making sure that you're focusing on getting the best out of your day. Behavior, again, proactive is the key here. Looking at the advisory, open door policy for administrators and counselors. We're never going to turn away a student. We're never too busy to see them. We will drop what we're doing and immediately address the issue with the student to make sure that they feel comfortable. Student discipline over the same time period, so we looked at September through December of both last school year and this school year, is down 22%, and we are very happy to say that we've had 0 physical altercations in the high school, which is very unusual for high school. And I think the key to that is the open communication. We use restorative justice, so if students get into a verbal argument, we immediately call them down. We get to the root of the problem through discussion and really kind of air out those issues so it doesn't just sit and kind of simmer and stew and turn into those physical altercations. We use our online room as a resource to minimize lost time, so instead of getting a student out of a building, we'll send them down to the online room where they'll be able to access their work, get instruction for an hour or whatever it takes for them to cool down, and then get them back in the normal school day. And again, we use PBIS and Code Blue, Moment of Excellence, reward our students for their behavior weekly. And again, preventative measures, discussions with administrators. Academics, parent conversations with the teachers and administrators. Not a week, not a day goes by where we're not making some type of contact with parents and the students, having the discussions with them and trying to find out what's holding our students back from being successful. And we also make adjustments to the schedules based on their needs. Just because a student is placed into a classroom, if that's not the right fit for them academically, it's not the right fit for them socially, we'll do everything we can to help them acclimate to that and accommodate them. But at the end of the day, we're going to do what's best for that student and their needs. And if it comes to changing their schedule, then we're open to that. Not during the middle of the semester. We'll do it. Parent conversations. We've identified the weaknesses and the gaps in instruction, continuing to identify those, and again, that's through the use of looking at the NMSQT and conversations with the students. It was very valuable in the last student advisory committee to sit down and have the conversations with the students. What do you need in class? What are you missing in class? What's not being taught? And students will tell you exactly what they need. Teenagers are very open and honest. They're letting us know what they need. So the road ahead, we're going to continue to examine the data. One of the things that we're going to focus on this year is exit interviews with the seniors. So because this is my first year, I haven't had the advantage of having these seniors for their entire time through the high school. So we're going to sit down and we're going to create a survey for our seniors to find out what their educational experience at Richmond High School was like, to see what we could have changed, what could have done differently, so we can provide those opportunities for our students that are going to be with us for the next 4 years. We're also presenting the data that shows a correlation between attendance and grades for our students, because a lot of times we're finding that our high schoolers don't realize that attendance and grades are intertwined so significantly, so we're providing that evidence to them. Behavior is continuing to create a family atmosphere in the high school. School culture, we're going to use surveys, and then standardized testing at the high school.
My last questions,
Yes.
Mr. Castle. Your student advisory, how many students?
15.
15? And they didn't volunteer, either the staff recommended them? Or
So-
did they volunteer?
They were presented with the opportunity to take part in it, and all 15 of them that we called down indicated that they did want to be a part of it. The first meeting, not everyone was able to be there. We had a field trip that day, and a significant portion of our student body was at that field trip. We're not going to have it Friday because I'm not going to pull the kids away from exam time, but we'll have one next Friday and then twice monthly.
And then, it's maybe too early to ask this question, but you talked about the advisory class that you're looking to do. Can you just tell me what does that kind of look like? What would be, what does it look like? Or do you not know because you're just talking about it? And that's fine.
Yeah, we're still examining where it could fit into a schedule, how it can be used, but it's essentially to address a lot of the soft skills that our students, we want our students to know. And again, offering the ability to provide those individualized conversations and adjustments to students' academic, social, and attendance behavior.
Can I interject here? The concept that Mr. Castle and staff are looking at is basically taking a small portion of minutes off each class schedule and adding them to one of the hours of the day. And then during that, so let's assume our class are 60 minutes, so we take off 5 minutes of class.
Correct.
That adds about 25 minutes on 5 of the classes that we add onto one of the hours. So let's assume we had 25 minutes on the second hour. So a teacher would normally teach their second hour, and then the last 25 minutes would be that advisory. Not on a daily basis concepts. It could be 2 days a week, it could be once a week. So what we're looking at, and from my angle on the logistic is, number one, contractually, I got to make sure I'm following the contract. And the REA has been extremely supportive when teachers have led initiatives on stuff like this. The middle school example is a perfect example. But also on the minutes instruction, because we don't want to lose instructional minutes. What we normally have called, sometimes in the past, homeroom, or sometimes you don't get those as counted as instructional minutes. We got to make sure there's an instructional focus during that block time. So that's roughly where conceptually they're at, and designing what happens during that 25 minutes is what Mr. Castle talked about, those soft skills it might be.
And it's not that we, by ourselves as staff, wanted this. This came partially out of the student advisory committee. So the students said that they really valued this opportunity, and it did create that smaller family type atmosphere within the school. So it gave them that cohort that they had and those people that they could rely on. So we really do value the student input.
No, I think it's exciting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next presentation is the sinking fund. Brian.
Okay, Tammy and I are both going to present this. I'm going to go from here so I can use the computer. Okay, tonight I'm going to talk to the board about a possibility of a sinking fund for the district as an option to consider. There's a couple, as we go through the process, there's a couple time windows and frames that we have to, if we're going to go for this, to consider. So the first question, or the first statement is, what is a sinking fund? A sinking fund is very similar to a bond. It's a levied millage, but it's very specific in what it can be used for. School safety improvements, technology improvements, repairs and construction of school buildings. It's a pay-as-you-go. The law in Michigan allows that districts can levy up to 3 mills for 10 years, and then it has up to 10 years, so it then would have to go back to the voters to be renewed. A sinking fund cannot be used for regular maintenance, painting, just normal maintenance of the buildings. It's more for the improvement. It cannot be used for purchasing teaching supplies or textbooks, paying teacher salaries, administrator salaries, or anybody's salaries for that matter. It requires you to put the money in a separate account. There's a separate accounting system that has to be used. There's a separate audit that has to be done every year regarding those. But it's a revenue source for a district to make the maintenance and school safety improvements. So you're probably asking, or may have asked, why now? Why are we considering a sinking fund? This is my 5th year being here. We really haven't had a conversation about it. The voters approved a bond in 2013. That is a payback of a little over 10 years, or a 10-year payback. Quite a few years payback. So one of the financial advisors we use as a district is PFM Financial Advisors. And there is an opportunity that the district has that if we went to the voters and asked them to approve a sinking fund, it would not increase their current millage rate that they're currently paying today. Again, the law allows you to go to up to 3 mills. The recommendation that for the board is to recommend going for a half a mill. Again, that would create enough revenue, and we're going to go over what the projected revenue is going to be, but it wouldn't increase anything that the voters are currently paying now. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Tammy to talk to you about the sinking fund and alternates.
Okay, PFM did 2 scenarios for us that show they're both similar in that it would be a half a mil added. Both would be for up to 10 years. And in both cases, they assume an increase in our taxable value of about 2.5%. The difference is when it would start. In scenario 1, it would be an election coming up in May. It would be a half a mil. It would give us about $266,000 in the first year. We would put it on the summer tax roll for 2019 so that it would be revenue in the 1920 school year. Over 5 years, it would give us just under $1.4 million, and in 10 years, it would be just under $3 million that it would raise for doing those improvements that Brian mentioned. Second scenario just delays. It's still a half a mil. It's still the same assumptions. It just delays when we would start collecting it. So we could have an election anytime between now and May of 2020 to get it on the 2020 tax bill, which would bring in the money in the 2021 school year. It would bring in about $273,000 in the first year if we went for the 2020 tax roll. Over 5 years, it would be $1.4 million, just a little over, and then in 10 years, it would just be over a little over $3 million in total that it would bring in. On this chart, the top part shows what our actual taxable value increases have been over the last 5 years. So in 2015, our highest increase was 8.77% in taxable value. The year after that, 2016, not very surprising, it was only a third of a percentage increase. But when you take the 5 years and average them, we're at 3.47% over 5 years on average. In 2018, we are at $519,649,000 in taxable value. It went up 3.91% from a year ago. And the chart on the second chart on that page starts with our current taxable value. It shows our growth of 3.91%. And then it goes, the second line, 2019 would be the first year we would levy a $500,000. It shows our projected taxable value increasing 2.5% to $532 million, and it would generate that $266,000 in the first year. In the second year, 2020, it would generate roughly $273,000. If you continue for 5 years, it's just under that $1.4 million. All the way to 2028, that would be the last year it would be levied unless it was renewed. And for fiscal year ending June 30, 2029, if we hadn't spent any of that money, but that's not the plan, but we would have raised just under $3 million.
So you can see on this one, the growth rate that the assumption is 2.5. The average growth rate over the last 5 years has been 3, 4, and 4. So it's conservative nature. If the growth rate is higher, there would be more revenue generated for the district.
And it is a projection, and you can see that ranged from very little increase to higher increases, so they use the average. And then, as Brian said, they go with the conservative approach. The next slide shows what we would need to cover our current debt. Why would there be no increase? Well, the board sets the millage rate each year. We review the L 4029 to review in June about the time we're doing the budget, and it sets the millage rate based on projections by PFM, but it also tells us how much we're going to need to cover our debt for the next year. And debt meaning the bonds that we currently have outstanding, principal and interest for the next 12 months. So we make those payments in November 1st and May 1st. So the important part is to get that millage in so that we can start using it. We wouldn't be able to spend anything until the collections were wrapped up in May, and then we get this county settlement check to wrap it up. But there's something that they use called a delinquency allowance, where they estimate how much we collect in our taxes from the time they're levied in July until they come in March. They come in throughout the time until the February 28th deadline. And then after that, we have to make our payments on principal and interest in the bonds by May 1st. We don't necessarily have county settlement checks at that point, so what they use, so we have to pay attention to what our reserve is, so that we have enough to carry us through from July through the following May to make those payments. As you can see on the far right, there's a blue square rectangle circling the millage rates that are needed for our debt. So for this year, we levy 5.5 mils, and next year, based on the growth rate of 3%, we can reduce that to 5 mils, which is a $500,000 reduction. And that's why it allows us to not have to do increase in the property tax, in the millage rate. It's remain at 5.5%. The next slide shows it's a bar chart. It shows in blue what we currently levy for our bonds. And you can see in 2018, it's 5.5%, 5.5 mils. And then in 2019, assuming this is a scenario we go with, we would have the blue, and then the red on top would be what the millage would be under using the sinking fund. You can see the blue goes down, the red stays the same, so that by 2028, after 10 years, all that would remain is our final year of a sinking fund millage. And our bonds are scheduled to be paid off at that point.
So the discussion is, if we do nothing, the voters, when we do the budget this coming June, and we approve the millage rate, would see a decrease in their millage rate, because we won't need to levy as much millage to pay the principal and interest on our current bond debt.
And they are conservative in what they estimate, but we will know usually in May what our actual taxable value will be for the 2019 levy. And the next chart is our scenario 2. It again has the growth rate of 3.47 as our average. But instead of starting the millage in tax year 2019, which is the second year of the slide, 2020 would be the first year it would be levied. It would be a $500,000, and it would raise $273,000. After 10 years, it would raise just over $3 million. And again, it would just be that $500,000 each year from 2020 to 2029. And our final year of recognizing that revenue would be the 29-30 school year. And again, they show under for scenario 2, they show our current 5.5 mils in the blue box on the right, going down to 5.2 mils for 2020, and then going down another half a mil for 2021. So it shows a decrease again of that half a mil, which again would mean a flat millage rate with the sinking fund. And this chart shows in 2018 in the blue, just levying what we need to pay our debt. 2019 would be the same. And then this millage would start in 2020, and you can see where we're levying what we need to pay our debt, which is just about 4.5 mils, and then a half a mil on top would keep it flat for the 2020 tax year. And again, that one it was 10 years, that one we go through 2029, so it gives us one more year without any bonded debt payments, just the sinking fund.
So when you look at both scenarios, over the 10-year period, we would have received about $3 million in revenue for a half mil. If the board wanted to go to the community and say we want the full 3.0 mils levy, it would basically, for every half mil, you're getting about $300,000. So you multiply that by over the six halves for equal to 3, you're 1.8 million that you could have each year if you levied the full mill. Well, the recommendation is not, and I'm going to explain. Here's what is allowable. We briefly talked about it at the beginning. Construction of new buildings, $300,000 is not going to get you a new building in the district. Not even going to get you an addition to buildings. Remodeling of existing buildings, you can use it for energy conservation. For instance, many of our buildings, there are thousands of light balances in these buildings, and they are starting to go. If we wanted to convert all these lights to LED and receive a significant savings on the energy side, this could be something that we could use the funds for to create a savings within the budget. Asbestos abatement, land purchases, developing and improving site, just improvements to the buildings, developing and improving athletic and physical education facilities, developing and improving playgrounds is the last was there because it has to be a permanent structure. You can't have non-permanent playground equipment. It has to be in the ground permanent. It covers the cost of the audit required for this fund. It could cover the purchase of technology. In the 2013 bond, we have money that in the last series we sold that's set aside to begin replacing the laptops that were purchased 4 years ago. Once that's done, in 4 years, if we're going to continue that technology, we have to come up with a revenue source to replace those. The sinking fund could be used for instructional technology. It cannot be used for technology that's not used for instruction. Repairs, replacement, and portable classrooms. What is not allowed is you currently cannot purchase school buses, though the legislators have looked at this multiple times, and school buses has been part of the discussion, but it's never been approved. In the last bond, you guys as a board approved 5 school buses that the community approved. We will be purchasing our 5th school bus this coming spring. After that, we will now have to allocate dollars in the general fund for school buses. So in the, we're going to approve the FY20 budget. So in the FY21 budget, we're going to have to allocate approximately $100,000 for a school bus to maintain on a replacement schedule. Typically, school buses are replaced once every 10 years is the industry standard. Ours is once every 13 years. And that has been significantly improved since the latest purchase of the last 5 months, or buses, excuse me. Loose equipment and furniture, computers for non-instructional can't use. Maintenance, painting, stuff like that, you can't use the funds for that. Supplies, salary, lease payments, automobiles, trucks or vans, uniforms, textbooks. Upgrades to computer operating software systems cannot be used, or training or consulting. So from a timeline perspective, if the board wanted to go to the community, we really have 4 opportunities if we wanted to go for a half mil sinking fund. If the board passes a resolution on the 21st authorizing a half mil sinking fund, it will be placed on the May election. That would be levied in July's 2019 taxes, and we would begin receiving that revenue in fiscal year 19, or excuse me, fiscal year 20, the 19-20 school year. If for some reason the board wanted to put off, or let me back up. If you wanted to go on the May election, say we want to levy it now but not apply it till 20, you could change the ballot language to say that. As you can see in the two scenarios, the different revenue that is projected to increase. If the board didn't want to vote in May and wanted to put it off to the August 19th election or the November 5th election or the May 2020 election, you still have 3 other opportunities to go to the community and say, for a half mil, it's no increase over what you're currently levied now, or what's currently being levied, if you go for the half mil. If you go for more than a half mil, then you're going to tell the community we're asking for an increase. So what's needed? There are multiple areas in the organization. The need is now. I mean, we have multiple things that we have been very creative in fixing and funding. As the bond dollars are now exhausted, a lot of the improvements were done through the bond, but there was a whole list of items that never got approved, or not, because there wasn't enough money in the bond to do these improvements. If we don't have another revenue source, such as a bond or sinking fund, then all of the costs that I'm going to start describing to you now are going to have to be built into the budget, which currently aren't there. So for instance, parking lots. There is not a line item budget to improve parking lots. The high school front parking lot if you go out during the day, it's crumbling. It's beginning to fall apart. The back parking lot in the auditorium is also crumbling. If you look at the bus garage and the bus garage front and the back parking lot where the bus is, it is pretty much a gravel. And we've been working with the city of Richmond to patch and cut out pieces, and then we've actually gotten on their bid for city improvements. So we've been able to utilize that cost to make some of the repairs, but there's some repairs that are beyond just patching. As we talked about, the Roosevelt Civic Auditorium parking lot is something that, as we own that building at some point, we maybe have to look at replacing that parking lot. It's pretty much just gravel over there. It's a broken blacktop. The middle school front and side parking lot, though, are in very good shape. There's a lot of cracks that are starting, so we're going to have to do some preventative maintenance, which are going to come into the budget. The elementary front parking lot staff are still in very good shape. You could add to parking lots. You could increase parking lots with a sinking fund. The West Drive, which is the road between the high school and the football field, is becoming near its end of its useful life. The high school athletic complex, you could look at adding a parking lot next to across from the elementary bus loop to accommodate additional parking for the athletic complex there for the baseball and soccer field, excuse me. Again, the elementary bus loop and the roundabout that are still in decent shape. In the next 10 years, they're going to have to be replaced. Let's look at roofs. Start with the high school. In this picture, anything shaded in yellow in pink here, within the next 10 years, the roof will have ended its useful life. Just look at the auditorium and the gymnasium that was built in 1998-ish. It's nearing 20 years now. In 10 more years, we're going to be nearing 30 years to the end of that roof. So at some point, we're already starting to make repairs. You can see there's a leak right there. We're repairing this area right now, which is the area that was, I believe this was added on in 98 with the other additions. So we're starting to see those repairs. Middle school is in the best shape. Half of it was replaced in the 2013 bond. The other half, which is basically from the computer lab office back, is being patched and fixed, but within the next 10 years, that roof will end its useful life expectancy. Elementary, a good chunk of it is from the additions that were put on to the elementary school, and the cafeteria and gymnasium were added, and the kindergarten and first grade wing. Again, these aren't areas that need to be replaced now or are, but within the next 10 years, we're going to have to budget money to fix these or come up with another revenue source. Technology and school safety. One of the things that has been talked about in the past, but for whatever reason, middle school does not have a secure vestibule. To do that, we'd have to renovate the main office. The sinking fund would allow us to do that. It would force individuals coming into the middle school, though it has the buzzer system, but it would force them from coming into the middle school into the office, and we would need some renovations there. A unified fire alarm system. For instance, at the high school, we have two systems. We have National Time and it just escaped me. So when the alarms go off, it takes two individuals to go and reset the alarms of the system because they don't talk to each other. You could create one system. And then ultimately, in technology, you could look at student laptop replacement after this bond series pays for them, which we'd be talking probably 5 years out from any sinking. Facilities, classroom doors. Many of the doors at the middle school, I would guesstimate, are about half. Were never replaced. They're chipping. They're starting to pull away from door frames. Flooring, tiles are starting to pop up. Now we're maintenance. We're doing the maintenance on it and doing it bits and pieces, but there are whole scale hallways that need to be replaced. And in the middle school in particular, the glue that's under the tile, at least the tile that used to be in front of the gymnasium in the band room, that glue had asbestos, so it had to be abated. So any tile replacement, we'd probably have to do some abatement on that tile. Sidewalks, driveways, and walkways. If you just look at the bus loop around the elementary school, there is a huge crack that goes around the bus loop. We've been replacing ramps as people go from the parking lot into the sidewalk. We've done some sidewalk repairs. The sidewalk that goes in from the high school to the auditorium is in need of repair. It's got a lot of cracks in it, as well as the sidewalk along the front of the high school. The step between the asphalt and the sidewalk are starting to become greater than an inch. Other things that were put on here, we've been looking at classroom space and preparing our schools to be the next for the next generation of students. We did a complete renovation in the culinary arts room. One of the things that we could look at doing is renovating the school store and counseling office, making that all one classroom school store combined and relocating the counseling office. We have a locker room, which is the former boys basketball locker room. And just to remind everybody, we had a OCR plan that we had to create an equal facility for boys and girls, and they were moved into the otherwise, we risk losing our federal funds, which is special education, Title I, and our food service funds. So we had to create two facilities within the locker rooms of the boys and girls for the basketball program. So we have an area in our building that is really unused. It's not usable. So that area could be renovated, knocking down the half-wall cinder block, maybe putting a ceiling in there to make it another classroom. It could make it into a second weight room, because our current weight room is very small, and the students oftentimes in the high school are using the middle school facilities. It's an option. None of these options none of these items that I put on here are what I would consider I'm going to call fluff, from the perspective within the next 10 years we're going to have to address space and facilities. And so that's why those two are put on there. Again, the next step would be if the board gives me direction tonight that you'd like to, or within the next 2 weeks through the board president, that you'd like to go to the community for a a sinking fund. And if you want to do it as a half mil, which would be no increase over what people are currently paying or levying now, I would bring a resolution to you on January 28th. From that point up until pretty much the month of February, we would take all of those items and begin prioritizing. We would have to contract with primarily a consulting construction company. Say, okay, if we're going to do this type of roof, how much roof can we get? What's the industry standard per square foot on roofs? And so let's assume we have 300,000 and the high school roof's going to take 900,000. And I'm just picking a number out of the air. We'd have to begin phasing what it would look like over 3 years. So I would be coming back with you with pretty much a 10-year plan of what would be done every year, based on the assumptions of a 2.5% increase in taxable value. With this process, we would go to the voters in May for an election on May 7th. Questions?
Can the sinking fund be used for solar or alternative energy or renewable energy anyway?
Energy conservation, there is some, there is language that allows that to do.
And what about pay to play? Can it pay for athletics in any way to go on the program?
It cannot pay for athletics, but as a board in the budget, if something in the current budget we don't need to use out of general fund because the sinking fund is going to, so basically moving the dollars from general fund to sinking fund, it would free up those general fund dollars, which then you could, as a board, decide we're not going to do the pay to participate fee, much like the board did when we did the freshman sports, and we assumed that we would assume those freshman sports costs in this current budget.
Brian, I know you said that revenue probably wouldn't cover the cost of building, and making an addition. I know we're running out of space at the elementary school. Would there be any money left over to do anything there, or do you kind of have all of this, the 10-year revenue planned with the list that you have?
With a $500,000, all of the items I listed here, you're not going to cover all these. So we'd have to prioritize what actually. Now, if you want to go to the voters and say we'd like the $500,000 at no increase, and then add on another $2.5 million, which would be an increase, now you're talking substantial funds, approximately $1.8 million a year that you generate, which would then get us in the ballpark of being able to possibly doing some additions over a period of time.
Right, so do you have a long-term plan for that? Just
Well,
making an addition, or?
From the facility space. The next step in the long term, as we move from 4th grade, it frees up some classrooms over at the elementary school. We have a few classrooms left at the middle school and the high school. We're getting tight. Would be then to contract with a company. Sometimes two companies that come to mind are Plant Moran Cressa and Stanford. Excuse me. And what they do is they do enrollment predictions, and they look at the economy, they look at the housing market, they look at birth and death rates. It's kind of morbid, but how many babies are being born in this area? How many people are passing away in this area, which could possibly turn over the housing to families with kids? And they look at it and they project, and they'll give you a 10 to 30-year projection on your enrollment. In my prior district, as large as it was, dealing with 16,000 students at that time, we use that quite a bit, and they are pretty spot on in their enrollment projections. And I'll just give you an example. When I left there 5 years ago, they were 15,000 students. The projection had them down to about 13,000 next year, and they are on track to be 13. So that district lost 2,000 students. So they're pretty spot on. And with the economy, knowing that there's a subdivision going in behind the middle school, those are things that we need to take into consideration. So once you have that, then as a board, we have the discussion and say, okay, if it's saying in 2 years we're going to have, or 3 years, potentially 200 more students projected, now we need to go to the vote and say, okay, we need to do a bond to do an addition. And that's what it's for. Is it either an addition, a new building? Districts have been pretty creative. They've done the 9th grade centers at the high school. I wouldn't recommend it here, but you can create a upper L, lower L building, or you just add on to the building based on the physical space we have on the campus. But that would be the next step, is once we've made the move, now we conduct this report, bring back to the board, say, okay, it's saying it could say in 5 years, you're going to be pretty stable. But in 6 years, you need to start considering how many more classrooms you're going to need. And one of the things that I'm concerned about, and I think we had the conversation Saturday when we did the walkthrough, Sunday, when we did the walkthrough at the elementary school, was even though the 4th grade move is to the middle school, creates basically 3 more classrooms that we're bringing up at the elementary school. What's on the back burner is we have class sizes, we typically have 4 of each section, that are starting to get to a point where we need to have the conversation, do we need to make 5 sections? For instance, I believe kindergarten is 105. That's 27, 26 kids in a class. Math's probably not correct on that one, maybe a little different. But 105 kids, if we added 5 sections, it would be 21 kids in a classroom. That's going to have a significant impact on achievement. It's another cost that you're going to add to the budget because it's another teacher. But if I had to add another classroom, where am I putting that classroom at Lee currently? I'm just trying to solve the attrition of moving kids up the 4 section. But we have grade levels that are starting to get to the conversation of should we add a 5th section?
I guess if we may have to go back to the voters for an addition, I would like to keep it at a half mil if we do pass this. I'll just throw that out there. I wouldn't want to go above a half mil right now.
Brian, when you're talking about timeframes and let's say in 2 weeks, we say we want to go with the election, the May date. Then you've got to move and put the plan together, put the wording for the election, all of that, and you're talking about informational campaign, March, April, May. Do you feel that that's sufficient to get the job done, get the information out there, or is it a better idea to say that's what we want to do, but go for the August date?
We will have the information in February in terms of prioritizing a 10-year plan that I can present to the board. I've already had the conversation with French's and Associates, which has done much of our work in the district from an architectural standpoint. So they know our buildings and they know what roofs and the life inspectors. So now we're just looking at what can we physically afford. It may, when you look at like an example of the high school, when all the dust settles in 10 years, we may only have accomplished half of that.
Right.
When you look at dollars and cents. But so from that angle, I have every confidence that in February you will be presented with, here's year 1, year 2, and here's, if we assume this revenue, this is our target projects. That then when we go to the voters, we can say this is what will happen, barring a significant economy downturn and so forth like that. But based on the revenue assumptions of this projection, this is what we'll be able to afford. The concern I have is going off into, I should say it's a concern, you really have 4 opportunities to sell the community. It's no increase in taxable rate. And it's May of this year, August of this year, November of this year, and then May of next year. The legislators, as you know, have restricted when schools can go to the community, and they can only go on certain dates. So part of this logic or reason behind it is knowing the challenges of passing the bond in the community. It allows us multiple opportunities to, before we have to say, now we're going back for the same thing, but it's going to be an increase now over what you're paying.
I would be interested in seeing if we could somehow canvass the community and see if they would be willing to even do an increase, as said, rather than just, I understand the 0.5% you said would get us in maintenance-wise over the next 10 years, but you're also saying the growth rate is growing so fast, so rapidly, and we're all feeling it already. If we went for more than the $0.5 million at the 2019 or even the 2020, would we have enough then to make them get
If that's the direction the board wants to go, then I would say I would not recommend going to a May because we would need time to do that. Okay. A district to our south is putting an election ballot on May. They contracted with a company to do that community. What's the temperature of the community? How much are they willing? They're also doing the marketing information because we can only prevent factual. I cannot tell the community, vote yes, vote no. I can only say here's the facts of what would be presented. That district spent $30,000 for that study as well as the marketing for their upcoming village.
Well, I just think we are notorious for not passing bonds, having difficulty in this community, and I just think the need is there. You have talked about it for a while, and I don't have any problem with going in May and doing the $0.5 million because we can get things done that we, in essence, don't have the money for by asking the voters and not having an increase. So that would be the direction I would go.
I agree. Brian, how would you reach out to the community to get their view?
To get their view in terms of what would they be willing to support. we have to host some community events to get people in or go to them, whether it's at the community center or churches over to begin having a conversation.
We're going to look for their input on what they may be willing to.
They tolerate from an increase, or if that's the direction the board wants to go, then I would recommend not a May election. Give me an opportunity to have these meetings or work with a company. It doesn't have to be that $30,000. We can customize something that does either surveying or feedback of our community members to see are they willing to tolerate a 0.5%. Because everybody's financial situation is different. The economy seems to be in the right direction, regardless of the gridlock you may have in Washington from trying to get, but it really hasn't directly impacted us. I say that loosely because it has in some families, it has affected them, but it's depending on what the economy, if companies aren't doing well because of policies in Lansing, layoffs, I mean, how many of our communities are going to be affected by the GM decision of moving employees in the second line suppliers, et cetera. But if you want me to go that route, then I would not recommend May. Then we need time to do a survey, do some type of inquiry with the community to see what they're willing to tolerate.
Okay, and having it, if we didn't say we did postpone it, would that cause an issue with the current trajectory of how things are being planned and what you have lined up for the near future?
No, because what it's going to affect is when we come to the board table in June to approve the FY20 budget, we look at our trends in maintenance. I'll just use this one as an example. And over the last 3 years, our maintenance costs have increased. We're doing more roof repairs. We're doing more fixture repairs. Some of that is going to be relieved this year because we have an in-house electrician and a plumber, but there's still a lot of repairs.
We have light post all over because the parking lot was deteriorating around Medley, Finley at one point, in the high school parking lot.
We had we had one on that, but some of that was covered through the insurance because there was an accident. But there are things that are like for instance, if you go along the curve to the middle school, there is a huge pothole there. And I can patch it and fill it, but at some point that's going to have to be fixed. That elementary bus loop, I was just walking from the elementary back to the office today after their construction meeting. There's probably a 1/2 inch to 1 inch gap in some of those sidewalks, and it runs the whole length of that cement. None of that is budgeted for. So if that's going to be on my target to-do list for next fiscal year, then that revenue that we may have anticipated to use for something else is going to have to go to maintenance because we got to get it fixed. So I guess what I'm asking for the board is if you want to go for the half, I have all the confidence in that you will be ready to present to the board. Here's the 10-year timeline. Here's what we anticipate in revenue. Here's the projects that we'll target it. So it's very specific. So when we do the informational campaign with the community, it's very clear what people are voting for. If you want to look at the tolerance level and see if people are willing to pay more in a millage, then the May, it won't work in the May. We're going to need more time. To go to your point, if at some point when these projections come that you're going to have to add on to a building, you have a couple $1 million to add on to a building. The last bond that we passed was $14 million, and the addition on the high school was a couple of those millions. So. And that was 4 classrooms. So.
Do you want an answer or direction tonight, or do you want people to contact you?
Well, as a
within the
board,
next
I guess
2
I'm
weeks?
looking for a consensus. Do you want to go a $500,000 that I be in? Because I'm going to need to contact the attorney that we work with for the bond to get the ballot language. It's going to have to come to you as a resolution at the next board meeting. If you want to go the $500,000, but you want to push it off till the August, we can do that. It gives more time to bring the resolution to you. That's what I'm looking for. What direction, if any, does the board? If you don't want to do anything, then
I think think that I would like to see the next step for sure, getting into overseeing the next step.
You guys down there in favor of May? Abigail?
I just don't think the 3 million is going to go as far as you think.
It's not. These projects that I list are not going to be.
So I don't think 25 would be adequate, but that's just my opinion.
Looking at the list, it's not going to cover the expenses that, we definitely would have to prioritize those.
Absolutely.
Because roofing is phenomenally expensive and parking lots and things like that. So, while I believe that the 0.5 mil would be something that could be passed in the community, I'm still not sure that it's enough.
I could sit here today saying everything I identified, it is not enough.
If
There are
we
still
went-
going to be projects.
If we went to a mill, what does that, I mean, do you know what that increases per household based on?
Do you know off the top of your head what?
So if you have $1,000, for every $1,000 in taxable value, it's basically 0.1%, 0.1%. So it'd be 1,000 times 0.001. So it doesn't, if you have a $100,000 home, I believe it's $100,000.
I think many people in the community would want to hear that number. When you stretch that out for everything that we would benefit if we went for more than the half mil, I think it's definitely something worth considering. I mean, if we are going to lose out and not be able to make budget if we don't do this in May, I'm concerned about that. But if that's not the case,
a statement at all.
no, I'm just saying if that's not the case, I wasn't saying that's the statement. I'm saying if that's not the case, then I might be interested in seeing another, canvassing the community and seeing another proposal for a higher mill if everybody else on the board or more people on the board were interested in more information. I know we're postponing.
If again, postponing is not an issue because there are, even if you only went to half, you have 4 opportunities to go to the community and say, it's no increase over what you're currently paying for the half. If you want to postpone it and push this off to August, that would give, I could take between now and that time period of when it would have to go. You'd have to approve this in June since there are no July meetings. We could, I don't know if I can commit to this, but I will try to. If it's a half, here's what we can get. If it's a mill, here's the additional projects we could get because you'll have the additional revenue. I would need to work with the French's and Associates or something, one of the contractors that we do, to provide that scenario so that in August or in June, when you have to take action on it, you could have in front of you, okay, if we only want to go still only want to go to half, this is all that we're going to be able to afford. If you want to go for an increase, you could add these projects on. And they could probably do different scenarios on the 1 mil, 1.5, 2. Because it's roughly, on average, a $300,000 increase a year for each half mil, roughly.
I just think we might be hard pressed if we push it to a mill or 1.5 to then go back if we do get this study back that says we're going to have to make additions. We might be hard pressed to then go back and say we already just increased, now we're asking for additional.
That is a concern that I have.
That's my concern. So you recommended the half. You must have thought a good portion of your list would be covered. I mean, if you think the half is sufficient to get us where we need to be. Now, some of these repairs you're talking about are 10 years out. We've got roofs that'll still be sufficient for another 10 years. I don't know. I guess right now I'm leaning toward the half. Anyway.
I guess I'm not concerned with the what ifs about having to build, add on to things. These are actual needs that we know we need. So I'm not concerned about additions to any building and what we might need in the future. We can deal with that when we get to that point.
So what do we want Ryan to do then?
I think you already had the majority of the people that said, I believe,
So
that
you
you went
said
down the
that.
table.
Well, Kit, Chris, and Kyle said no, but Jessica, I guess didn't hear from you yet. I'm good on half to make. Okay. That sounds like.
Actually, I wouldn't mind waiting if we could wait till August just to get the numbers. Are you saying, Kyle, Chris, that you feel, you also feel that it's worth at least investigating?
Well,
to
I'm
see?
for 1 mil.
Okay, I think it would be worth at least looking into.
Well, then maybe put together the list of half versus one and what you think that additional revenue would get us. and we could put
With
it
a
down.
target date of an August election.
Well, unless, do you think you could have that information that we could do it for May? Could you have that? Because the reality is, even if you don't have it for us that the January 28th meeting, we could still do it at the February meeting, correct?
Yes,
What's-
in the January 28th, you would have to pass a resolution saying what mill you want to levy. I will not have before the 28th the difference between half and one.
And we can't approve it in February. That's too late.
It has to be submitted to the county, I believe, on February 12th, which is a Tuesday. You have a meeting the day before. If there's a snow day, inclement weather, offices are closed, it could be for nothing. This gives us from the 28th till the February deadline of turning it in. Filing date is February 12th. The August filing date is May. So you're going to have to approve this in April for an August date.
Would you be able to get the information to us by then?
It's much more doable, yes. I would not be able to get it to you by January 28th.
So it sounds like the majority is willing to wait till August and wants to see the list.
At least, yes, I would at least see what it would be, and maybe even, I mean, after this meeting alone, to see maybe how some community members feel about it, and if it isn't even worth our time, it may not be, but I think it's definitely something, because it's inevitable we are outgrowing what we are currently in, yes.
Correct, but the sinking fund is
We are
not
talking
going to
about
address
outgrowing.
the adding on.
This is just.
This is parking lots, roofs, sidewalks, maybe some renovations within the building that are going to be needed. You know, just take carpet in some of the room classrooms. In a couple of years, that's going to have to get replaced.
So you're
So
saying
it
the
starts to
one
buckle.
mil increase wouldn't help in any way with an addition onto the elementary or any other buildings?
No, what I would do is if that's the goal the board wants to tie this into, then I would go to the architect and say, okay, if I need to add 4 classrooms, 5 classrooms, 8 classrooms on an elementary, what's the dollar amount? And work backwards to tell you, okay, if you did levy 3 mills, would you get it? But then that may just solve that problem, and now you still haven't addressed roofs, parking lots, and so forth. And that may not be able to, once you collect the revenue, happen for 5, 6, 7 years down the road, depending on the dollar amount. But I can definitely work with them if you want to hold off till the February meeting to do a scenario of a half, 1 and a half, and see where we go from there.
I would be interested in at least a little more information, if that's okay with the rest of the board.
Sounds like it. All right, thanks, Brian.
So the resolution will not come to the board in the 28th, but at a future board meeting, we'll have a presentation showing the job. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, the next agenda item is public comment. This is the portion of our meeting where you can come up and address the board. Please come to the podium, sign in, leave your name and telephone number on the sheet that's provided. This is not a question and answer period. If you have a question and you need an answer, someone will contact you. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone that would like to address the board?
Hi, I would like to address an issue with my freshman son and his basketball coach. I know I only have 3 minutes, so I'll try to go as quick as I can. Last Monday, my son, who's a freshman basketball player and on a robotics team, had practice. He's been juggling both activities without any incident off city zone lawn.
Sir, I'm sorry, 1 second. You can't talk about an employee. If you have a concern, general concern, you talk about that, but not a specific employee.
Even if the employee is bullying my son?
Yes, I would recommend that you contact Mr.
You
Wamsley
did
or
send me an
the...
email on Friday, and I talked to your wife, I believe, on Sunday.
Yes, and I don't feel your actions are sufficient at all.
So I'd like to take this as far as I can.
Did you want to leave your name and number, and then I can contact you, and we can talk about it?
I'd like to get this resolved as soon as possible because it's been going on for over a week.
I just can't.
A week worth of bullying for my son is unacceptable.
Absolutely. I would be happy to give you a call if you'd like me to this week. We just can't talk about a specific employee publicly.
Can we just talk about the incident? Not the employee himself.
No. We've already identified the employee, unfortunately, but I would be happy to contact you if you leave your name and number.
Would this be an option in a closed session? Can you request a closed session?
I apologize.
We'll be going to the media with it then.
I mean, I've
Our
gone
coach
through all the
insulted
formal
our
channels
son, considered his
and
gay, so we're going to the
I got
media.
nothing.
It's okay to for an employee to call our son gay, but that's okay. We can't do it here.
I apologize. This is just a legal matter that we have to follow, but I would be happy to contact you this week. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board?
Just in honor of Board Appreciation Month, I know from my own experience growing up as a child, sorry, I'm Cheryl Turek, I'm a teacher in the school, you don't hardly know me. I know from my own experience growing up as a child with a parent that was a board member, it is a huge commitment, a lot more than 2 meetings a month that the public sees. You put countless hours researching and reading up on the issues for our schools, from our local level all the way up to federal and state levels. So I just want to thank the veteran school board members for your time that you were given for trying to make Richmond Community Schools the school to choose. And I want to thank our new school board members, for your willingness to give of yourselves to serve our district. We all know these are trying times for our schools, especially in light of recent legislation. We're looking at possible millage issues here in our district, which are never easy. And I think that if we all work together, we can look forward to some positive future and some changes for our school. As Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. And I think the people that are seated before us here are one very important link in the chain for the students of RCS. So thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Donna Suter, and I guess this is my first board meeting attending. I did not attend the December meeting, so I kind of missed out on the whole move to the 4th grade into the middle school situation. So I was glad that you brought up some of the issues with the millage, trying to add additional space to the elementary. So my understanding is only 3 options were presented on what the options are to try to alleviate the elementary congestion. And I guess I'm more curious to know why more options were not presented, like the mobile units, like moving preschool out of the elementary into its own building. If you have a building that you guys own, why not use a separate building for the preschoolers? I don't know if the board or the school district gets money from the preschoolers, but my understanding is that's not part of the budget, and that there's additional funds comes in from preschoolers that the parents pay to have their kids come for preschool here. So I guess I'm more interested to hear other options. You can't answer questions, right? So I can't say, is it a done deal? Is this going through? Are 3rd graders, 4th graders going to be in the middle school next year? You can't say, right? So as a parent, I was happy to hear that at least additions are being considered. And I guess I'd like to know if more options are on the table. I don't particularly care for having my elementary student being in the middle school. So I'd like to entertain other, I guess, options that might be available. And I guess another question, as you guys were discussing this budget going forward with the millage, with the 0.5% millage increase, I think you might have an easier time in the community if you specified what that was for. So giving the whole bullet list of all these things sounds a little bit too murky. So if you came in with a 0.5% millage increase and said we are going to resolve the elementary congestion issue and we are going to look at doing this and being specific with it, you might have an easier time. I think the community would be more accepting of a millage increase like you did for the high school. You mentioned being specific about adding this many rooms. So if we were going to go above a 0.5 mil and do a 1 or 1.5 mil, if it was specifically devoted to addressing these congestion issues, I think it would be an easier time passing. And I guess my other question, which I can't answer, my understanding is how does the district handle donations? If a corporation said, you know, I got a roofing company and I got some guys who are willing to volunteer and are going to put a new roof on the high school, are you allowed to accept donations in that degree for anything? It could be carpet or paint or
If you make sure your name and numbers, I'll call you tomorrow.
Yep. Oh, yes.
That's all I have. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
We can't have an open discussion here about things.
No, not at this portion, correct.
I was hoping I did not have to stand up here today. My name is Kathy Garcia. I have 2 currently elementary students. I have a 2nd grader and a 4th grader. I am begging the board to please come up with something else than moving our young, innocent children who belong in elementary school to the middle school. They are little ones, as all parents know. They grow up so very fast. My 4th grader still believes in fairy tales. I would love to hold on to that for as long as I can. Sticking them with an 8th grader is not going to happen. I think being in elementary school, I'm not there all the time. I try to be. I volunteer whenever I can. Sorry, I'm very nervous. I'm very passionate about this. This is my children, our future children at Richmond. I am a taxpayer. I would have no problem giving $300 to $400 extra a year for my child to stay in the elementary system at an elementary grade level. I think if you did ask the community, you would be very surprised on how many people actually feel this way. I was hoping for a lot more people here tonight to speak up, to try to come up with another solution. I know that there are rooms available that we could make available in elementary school that would be very cost efficient. I also know of mobile rooms as far as like maybe art, or I know we can't do technology, but maybe the new STEM. There has to be something easier than spending all this money just to move the 4th grade, because my opinion, we're not going to hire next year another 1st grade teacher to make the classroom smaller. We have a hard time paying our teachers now. Adding on more teachers, maybe I'm being naive, I don't personally see that happening. So I know deep down, all the parents somewhere, you know it's wrong. You have to know it's wrong to put a 4th grader in middle school. They're little children, they do not belong there. So I would like the board to reconvene and maybe try to figure out an easier, better solution with our children at heart rather than the budget. I mean, it's not going to cost that much to, I'm willing to donate money to renovate a room for my child to stay in the elementary. And I'm sure you probably will find if you reach out to this community with questions and answers and what they would like to see, you would be surprised probably the outcome for communication rather than having my child write in 4th grade what the 4th grader's playground should be like, and then I get that sent home to me. That my daughter had to do it as an assignment, what she thinks the new 4th grade playground should be. So as a parent, I'm asking all of you parents to please reconsider. There has to be better options. These are children at stake. Please let them be children. Thank you.
My name is Jody Barron, and I'm just following up, right backing up Kathy. I also do not support the idea of the 4th grade moving to the middle school. She touched on a few things, and I'm probably going to repeat that because I had to write it down so I didn't forget. I have a 2nd grader and a 4th grader. I am in the schools, I see the little kids, and I just love being around them, and I want the best for them. Mine, as well as everybody else's. I'm a resident of Macomb Township. I choose Richmond schools. I choose to drive them to and from several times a day because they're also in all kinds of extracurricular activities after school. It's not easy, but I choose Richmond, and this is making it really hard to continue to choose. Of course, a big concern is being around the older students and hearing and seeing things that are inappropriate for their age. The concern of them missing out on elementary activities, although I know that you all have talked about them not missing out and still being part of the elementary activities. There's still going to be something that just doesn't work out. Being in the older student environment, they want to grow up. The kids, they want to. They want to be around the older kids, and they want to be grown up just like they are, but it's not good for them. You guys have talked about keeping them secluded and as far away from those older kids as possible. Well, I feel like, in my mind, I'm hearing solitary confinement because they won't be around other students. That's not healthy for socialization either. Another concern is not even just for the students that are here now, but you talk about the new subdivision that's coming in, future students that are coming to this community, are their parents going to want them 4th graders to be in a middle school environment also. I feel like that will deter people from wanting to come here. So as Kathy also mentioned, I would rather my kids be in an elementary school, my 4th grader being in an elementary school that is tight and crowded for a whole year and miss out on a special like art or do like a mobile classroom or a program like that. I'd rather miss out on the special because it's the whole rest of the year that they will be away from those younger students in that environment. So again, I really hope that this isn't a done deal. I really hope that this is something that can be reconsidered, and keep in mind that there's people that are not thinking that it's a good idea for reasons.
I'm deeply concerned about our young 4th grade students possibly being moved to middle school. I'm going to give you a little history about myself. I've had Hashimoto's disease and thyroid cancer. Some of you may understand the side effects, but for those of you that do not, it affects your memory. So I don't remember many details from my childhood or even life up until age 21 when I sought treatment. However, I do remember this unpleasant memory during my 5th grade year when an another fifth grade student came up to me at my locker and he smacked my butt. Yes, this is fifth grade. Why am I telling you this? Because it's a school that was kindergarten through fifth grade. And things happen. But this was a memory that made me feel very uncomfortable. And I truly believe mixing fourth grade students with much older, more developed young students is a recipe for stealing their innocence and security. I've also worked at Lee Elementary and been inside of the middle school this year many times. I've recently seen and heard behaviors when children were switching classes. For example, there was a girl standing at lockers swearing, talking about kicking someone's butt, running. I saw throwing books down the hallway. This behavior to me is less than appalling. And as I've aged, I have realized your life is not about you. It's about all the people around you that you can impact positively. And I just want to ask you as a school board to respectfully please reconsider while focusing on the children and not handing them issues, but finding a better solution between adults for these children. Thank you.
My name is Tressa DeVoe. I am a parent of a Richmond Community School student. Tonight I come here to ask you that you reconsider your plan for the move of fourth graders to middle school. I myself feel fifth grade is even too young for students to transition to middle school, let alone fourth. Children today are experiencing such higher levels of anxiety than ever before. They're being forced to live with many adult problems on their shoulders already, from parents' relationships and financial troubles to their own worries about friendships, their academic goals, and a possibly unstable life at home that they deal with on a daily basis. Unfortunately, they will now possibly have to worry about going to middle school also at 8 and 9 years old. My daughter is currently in fourth grade, so she's heading off to middle school next year regardless. In fourth grade she's benefited greatly from her elementary school experience, both in class time and extracurricular time. I do not feel that she would have benefited the same way developmentally in the middle school this year. Naturally, a transition to middle school is going to be unnerving, whether it happens at 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. I am asking, though, that you please reconsider this gigantic move. I ask that alternative solutions please be considered. I ask that you please let our kids be elementary school age kids one more year. I ask that this elementary school experience not be taken away from our kids any sooner than it has to be. Thank you.
Marcial, and I'm also very nervous to be up here, but I feel like I kind of have to, just because I'm very passionate about this as well, and I just want to support all my fellow parents who this is a concern for. If it's going to happen, I will make the best of it. I will be involved as much as I can, and I will try to stay positive, but I do feel that there are other options that maybe the new board did not have the opportunity to hear. And now I believe our here should also be a part of this decision moving forward, such as the portable art classroom. I know there's a room full of books right now. I know it's used for other reasons as well, but I feel like that doing one of those two options, or there may even be other options that maybe with time and more talk could be figured out, and probably are less inconvenient than moving the whole fourth grade over to the middle school. And I'm sure Miss Napier or the parapro who uses that room as well would be more than willing to have that conversation to see if it's a possibility to move forward with that option, or the art teacher maybe talk to her, see if it's an option for her and how they feel about it also. And on another perspective, I do feel like like Joey had said, she chooses Richmond schools. A lot of people in this district don't choose Richmond schools. They send their kids to Armada or East China schools. And myself personally, coming into the school, I did school choice over East China when we moved here. Sorry, probably gonna go over my 3 minutes, so I'm gonna cut it short. But I did end up moving my kids here because I love the small town feel. I love the school. I think all the principals are awesome. I feel like I felt a sense of stability, and the morale at the elementary school has gone up since the principal and the state have been there. And I just think when you have new parents coming into this school district, they're not going to want to send their kids, 8 and 9-year-olds, to a middle school. They're going to choose to take them elsewhere. I think that's what I wanted to say, but I also did want to thank you all for taking the time and your dedication, and I think that's it.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
I wasn't going to speak, but I'm not going to repeat everything that everybody else already said. It's exactly how I feel. But in the event that this doesn't get switched back or anything else gets chosen to be done other than the move, I'm just going to ask you guys to be a little bit more, when you're presenting or from here forward, Q&As, things like this, that it's more of a community kind of conversation. I know that Mr. Walmsley promised a Q&A at our meeting that we had at the elementary school, and I have yet to see that on the website. And it's obviously been on all of our minds since then, you know, what can we do? And so I know a lot of people have a lot of questions, so if we could just open the communication, and if this doesn't change in any other direction, and we do move forward with this, you're not going to have calm people back here unless we're all part of it a little bit more than what has been going on already. Something has to change from you guys for that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
My name is Randy. I wasn't also planning on speaking necessarily, so I don't have anything prepared, but sorry. I have the same thoughts that everybody else has. I don't really want to repeat the same exact things, but I can tell you right now, 5 years ago, we chose to move to this district because of Richmond schools. We researched every school in the area, and we chose to come here. And because of this change, not only us, but I know lots of others, we're now considering moving our entire family again because of this choice. And mostly, kind of to touch on what she just said, is mostly because I didn't feel like the community was even involved in the decision. I felt like the decision was made. We had the parent meeting. I felt like the parent meeting even got cut short, where we weren't able to even ask the questions that we wanted to after a certain point. I have a 5th grader who is at the middle school, and he feels exactly the same way as a lot of these parents are expressing. He says that there is no separation. He hears awful things. And he's exposed to these things as a 5th grader, and now we're going to add the 4th grade to that mix. And that really frightens me, especially being the fact that I have helped in the schools for the last 3 years. I'm in the classroom. I'm in the 3rd grade class right now, at least once a week, if not more. And there are kids in my son's class that can barely even spell their name, and now we're going to throw them into the mix with a bunch of 8th graders who are talking about sex and God knows what else that they could possibly be exposed to. I just don't think that a lot of the other options were considered heavily. I think we threw a couple ideas out and we made a decision without reaching out to our community and really seeing how they felt about donating their time or their money or any other hard labor that they could do to help transition classrooms around or make more space or fix some of the repairs that we're trying to fix around the school that are costing money that maybe we can't allocate to moving or keeping the 4th grade there. And I don't have anything prepared, but I really urge you guys to reconsider this decision. Our kids are what are going to continue after we're gone, and if we're exposing them too early to some of these things, they might not be as successful as we want, and we want the community to continue to grow, and we want our children to grow, and we want people to come here. And I think that if we move them to 4th grade, the 4th grade over to middle school, I think it's going to be a big turnoff for this community, unfortunately. So I hope that everybody will reconsider this. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to address the
Well, my name is Dino Stavropoulos. I, on the other hand, was dying to talk to you guys today. Knowing that it's not an open discussion is a bummer, since I was told before that we were invited here to speak our thoughts. So, not going back over the same things like everybody else, I do want to, just something that we observed, we didn't have too much of a problem with it, but it does bring a concern to us because this is what she's going to be exposed to. My daughter's in 2nd grade. I wonder how many of your kids are in elementary school. Over the weekend, my 7-year-old daughter was involved with a school play, Good Guys and Dolls. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. Parents were not allowed to attend the rehearsal, so we didn't really know what it was. I've never seen the play before. We were unpleasantly surprised to find out that this play had students carrying around, bottles of liquor, and there's just a lot of stuff in there, a lot of the material that was in this play that really turned us off, which is the way the play was, and that's the plot of the play. We get it. But again, it's my 7-year-old daughter. I'm not standing here today telling you that why was my daughter a part of this play. I'm trying to tell you that these are the things that she's going to be exposed to being in there. And it's not just the 1 year. I'm not happy that 5th grade is going to be in. That doesn't make sense to me. It should be all the way to 5th grade. And they were carrying around the bottles of alcohol, pretending to be drunk on the stage. And then a song was performed about, how women should change men and have babies, and cook roast for them. And just such a terrible message from this play. These are the things that I'm thinking is going to be, these are the same people that she's going to be in school with. This is the same type of material that's going to be there at the middle school. I would like to, really have in great detail how my child would directly benefit from being amongst a larger, much more developed group. I wonder how that would turn out. They're active in, much more different life scenarios. We have to now have, going into, the 4th grade, have a sexual education discussion with our child who's, going to be, it just doesn't make sense to me. She's my little girl, and that's what's going to happen before she goes into this school. You guys know that. Everybody here has common sense. We chose Richmond. We moved here 2 years ago. We decided to come here. We're literally a minute and a half away from Memphis, which was never really an option for us, but we're very close to Memphis. We, are 10, 12 minutes away from Armada, which is now being seriously considered. We love Richmond, but now because of this, we don't anymore. This is the way that it was presented to us at this last meeting. You guys talk about now about voters and having the community. It was never brought to my attention. Maybe it was my lack of knowledge, knowing any type of meeting that I could have attended. The money, I'll spend whatever for my kid to stay there. That doesn't bother me. That makes sense to me. This blows my mind. I do seriously hope that you guys will reconsider, or at least view other options. You guys talk about a lot of repairs. I understand what you're saying about the money that you need, but it would make sense to me to get as much as you need to handle all those things. That way you can do something in the next couple of years. Maybe not this year, but you say about 10 years for the roof. I can go on for days about money and stuff, but I get it. You guys have a job. I understand what you're doing, but that's not the answer. It isn't, and you know it. I don't know how you guys benefit from it or what it is, but you gotta come up with a different way. It's asinine what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Lasky, and I just want to say that I am against the move of the 4th grade. I have a 5th grader. She's a sweet girl, and I mean, she was exposed to things in elementary. I'm not as concerned about the exposure because through my experience with elementary, there were things that I had to explain to her that I wasn't ready for. I mean, it takes one kid to question, get all these ideas coming from your child, and have to explain what we don't want to explain ever to our child. But I just feel like I'm not so worried where they're going. I'm worried about the experience that they're going to miss out on. And I just really don't want my kid to miss out on a 4th grade experience. I have a 2nd grader also and a kindergartner, and I want to keep them and protect them as long as I can. So I'm against it. I'm against the 4th grade move. And that's it.
Anyone else would like to address the board?
I'm Kathy Miller. I'm a preschool parapro here in the district. I am a proud Richmond graduate, class of 1977. I am ecstatic that we have to move our 4th grade. This should be something we should all be proud of. We have more students. And I think all of us need to have faith in our leaders, in our Board of Education, and we need to understand that this is a good thing. I am certain that the administration at the middle school will do a fine job in keeping those students where they need to go, and when they need to go, and how they need to go. And I am certain it will work. We all just need to relax, and parents need to understand that this is a good thing for Richmond Community Schools. Being a preschool parapro, there is no way a preschool program should be moved to the middle school. Think of the cost of changing the bathrooms, the water fountains. It won't work. The doorknobs, just the very basic kind of things. So please, give it a chance. It's been a couple years. This idea isn't new. It's been rolling around for a couple years. So have faith and just relax with it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Okay, moving on. Board of Education Student Representative report.
Well, I hope everybody had a wonderful winter break and happy holiday. And as usual, I'll be starting off with the Lee School. They had end-of-the-year testing today, and this will continue until the 25th. And I previously discussed this at last month's board meeting, but they held their Detroit Red Wing Assembly. And following this, they held a Red Wing ticket sale fundraiser, and this raised a spectacular amount of $1,200. The PBIS True Blue Assembly is on January 25th, and the Green Club is continuing to collect plastic caps, and these will be used and recycled into a new bench for the school. I think this is a great way to expose young children to recycling so that they can adapt it into their everyday life. And the PTO Mom Prom is January 26th. Moving to the middle school, quite a lot's happened since the last board meeting. There was a holiday choir concert, and I've heard that this was very successful. The PTA held the dodgeball tournament, and I'm sure this was a lot of fun for both the staff and the students. The student council held a PBIS and reward assembly, and this week is filled with half days, and all the half days contain exams and end of the EA testing. The last home basketball game is this Thursday, and the sixth grade band concert is tomorrow night at 7 at the RMS cafeteria for anybody who would like to attend. Moving on to the high school, DECA members competed DECA members competed last Saturday among 750 other local high school students in District 7. And it was a very wonderful learning experience for those students. 3 of them actually were recognized for excelling in their area. Dr. Ladd took his government class to compete in We the People in the We the People competition. After many months of hard work, the class earned a successful 5th place overall, and they should be very proud of themselves. I had the opportunity to do the We the People competition last year, and I know it can be a very stressful time for the students, but it takes a lot of determination, and thankfully, Dr. Ladd does his very best to prepare the students for anything that may come their way. At the 2018-2019 Scholastic Art Competition, RHS placed 8 out of 39 schools for most accepted individual submissions in our region, and this is an awesome feat. 30 students competed, and 12 of them will be recognized for their accomplishments. Lastly, for the high school, winter athletics have begun, and these students competing continue to represent Richmond across the state, and they also continue to excel in both schoolwork and in their sports. Thank you.
Okay, Superintendent and legislative update, Brian.
I'm going to start with the legislative front. The 100th Michigan legislation was sworn in. December was an interesting lame duck session. I just want to put on record that our representatives voted for bills that were anti-public schools and anti-Richmond. I request that our listening audience look at those bills because some of them are now being questioned whether legally they should have been passed, such as the letter grade. But with that said, this past Friday was the revenue estimating conference for the 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 estimating general fund and school aid fund. And from that conference, the one in May, they used to determine what our per pupil allocation is. It was election year last year. We got a much larger increase than we expected, but we talked about that in May and new politics. The school aid fund is projected to be down $24 million. If that holds true, we will probably be flat with an allocation. And being flat with expenses continuing to rise, contracts up for negotiation becomes very challenging for the district as you increase expenses with little the same amount of money. The good news, I guess kind of good news, is the chair of the Senate K-12 Appropriations Committee, the representative from Traverse City, who believes in the 2X formula, which is how we get basically districts at a higher rate get one rate, and districts at a lower rate, which is Richmond, get 2 times that amount. His district can benefit from that, so it can be projected or assumed that the 2X formula will stay. But we will be watching this revenue conference as it compares to the one that's in May. Those are the 2 that really make the determination on our school aid funding. As I said, the legislators passed the letter grade A to F, despite what multiple organizations throughout the state told their legislators, despite the Michigan Department of Education, it was passed into law. The legislation expects to give a letter grade based on the performance of districts MSTEP in August. The reality is we don't even get those scores until after August. So the odds of them giving us a letter grade are slim to none. But the new Attorney General has been looking into whether the legality of this law in violation of federal statute is possible. With that, the district events. The Richmond Education Foundation is hosting its annual dueling pianos. I have tickets up here if anybody would like them. It's this Saturday. Tickets are $20. It's for the Youngers in Romeo. Tickets are $20. The doors open at 7. Entertainment begins at 8. All the proceeds go for student scholarships, classroom grants, and supporting scholarships for summer camps. As mentioned here previously in some of the public comment, there was a delay in getting the question answered. It is on the website as of today. Teacher 4th and 5th grade assignments have been finalized by the administrative team, and those teachers will be receiving their notification of who will be the 4th and 5th grade teachers for next year by the end of the month. Just a couple things. They told me to give me an update working with transportation. Next year, as our plan is, we are moving to move the pickup and drop-off location from between the high school and football field to in front of the middle school. We've also coordinated with transportation to allow a one-stop drop-off for latchkey for parents. They would drop off before and pick up after school at Lee, and we will transport them from Lee over here, and after school from the middle school back to Lee for those students that need latchkey. Currently, I believe, Mr. Koshin, 5 middle school students, about 5 take advantage of the latchkey to the middle school for the elementary program. The class of 2032 kindergarten roundup is coming up on March 6th. Dinner will be at 6:30. A presentation for those class of 2032 will be at 7. The class of 2033 and 2034, our incoming preschool students, will also be on March 6th. Dinner at 5 and presentation at 6 or 5:30. More information will be coming as we finalize the information today. We are working on the flyers, so there will be information on Facebook and newspapers, and a mailing that goes out to all the families in about 8,000 households in the district. The 2018-19 Teacher of the Year nominations are out. You go to the district website, you click on it and nominate a teacher. Those nominations will choose 1 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high school, and those winners will then go on to compete at the county level. Before you have a brochure that was put together. This brochure was mailed to 8,000 households. It was mailed individually to households. It targeted families with students that do not attend Richmond Community Schools. I would like to thank the administrative team in each building, the teachers at every building who helped put this together, and the articles, those that took the time to interview with the reporters that conducted this. But it gives a great snapshot of the district. These will be available in the lobbies of schools as well as on our district website. We did post it on Facebook. That Facebook post has reached over 20,000 views looking at this. It is targeted towards families with students that do not currently attend Richmond Community Schools.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Next is items of interest from the Board of Education.